My name is Richard Gast. I work for the USDA Agricultural Research Service as a microbiologist and as the research leader of the Egg Safety and Quality Research Unit at the U.S. National Poultry Research Center in Athens, Georgia. I've been a Poultry Science Association member since 1984. I was born in Sandusky, Ohio, which is actually my dad's family's hometown. It's a small city of about 25,000 people on the shores of Lake Erie. I never actually lived in Sandusky, but we spent so much time there when I was a kid that it really feels like a second hometown. So I've got lots of memories of being there, of riding my bike around quiet neighborhoods, of putting on a jacket on a cool summer evening and going for a walk with my grandfather to buy an ice cream cone, of big family dinners for holidays and big summer gatherings for picnics, of camping at a state park on the shore of the lake and riding the ferry across from downtown Sandusky, across Sandusky Bay over to the Cedar Point Amusement Park. My childhood there was really a pleasant mix of urban and suburban things like riding my bicycle, playing baseball, being on summer swim team, playing in the school band, being in Boy Scouts, going to church potlucks and singing in the youth choir and being an altar boy on Sunday mornings. I was an undergraduate history major. I started at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and then later transferred and finished at Ohio State. Always had the intention all through school of going to law school, and I in fact did go to law school for one semester and hated it worse than anything I'd ever done in my life and then left. So I ended up working in the insurance industry for 2 years after that, trying to find something I could do with a history degree. Found that that wasn't any more appealing to me than law school, and formed the rather naive idea that I wanted to be a veterinarian. So since my undergraduate science background as part of my history degree consisted of one biology course and one astronomy course, I had to go back to school for a couple of years to take all the required pre-vet science courses. When I eventually applied to vet school, they very politely informed me that I had completely neglected along the way to gain any meaningful experience working with animals, and they offered a couple of suggestions for what I might do to remedy this deficiency before reapplying to vet school. And one of the suggestions that they offered was to do a graduate degree in an animal science field, and that immediately struck a chord in my mind. The most enjoyable course I'd taken in the pre-vet curriculum was an introductory animal science course that was taught by Dr. Fred Stevens from the OSU Poultry Science Department. And I happened to know that by trade, Fred was a microbiologist, which had been the field of science that I'd really enjoyed the most while I was taking the pre-vet courses. So to make a long story short and fast forward to a year later, as I'm finishing up my master's working under Fred's direction in poultry science, and I was so immersed in the work at that point and enjoying myself so much that I never seriously thought about reapplying to vet school and stayed with the poultry science program to do my doctorate as well. What I'm proudest of in the work that we've done over the years that I've been at USDA is a story that began really in the early to mid 1990s when the egg industry and USDA regulators were grappling with the severe public health and economic problems that were caused by the transmission of Salmonella enteritidis infections to humans as a result of consuming internally contaminated eggs. And they were desperate to find some sort of scientific foundation as a basis for developing a long-term sustainable control program for reducing the risk of egg-transmitted Salmonella infections. Our group embarked on a long series really of research projects focusing primarily on using experimental infection models to try to better understand how chickens became infected with Salmonella enteritidis, how they laid contaminated eggs, how the pathogens survived and multiplied in those eggs and ultimately could cause human infections. When the epidemiologists did a very systematic and very detailed risk assessment for the problem of Salmonella enteritidis in eggs, they would cite our group's work as providing the cornerstone that enabled them to make recommendations for risk reduction practices that would ultimately lead to what has become a very successful national control program for Salmonella in egg-producing flocks. My core team of advisors, my major professor Fred Stevens, along with the people that I worked the most with, Mo Safe and the late Dr. Glide Marsh, really did a great job of preparing me for the kind of professional challenges that I was going to face throughout my career. And they also were wonderful role models of professionalism, for me to live up to. In the years at USDA, I have been very privileged to work with some very creative and energetic scientific partners who have undoubtedly contributed a lot more good ideas to our mutual work than I have, including Henry Stone, Bailey Mitchell, Gene Gard, my current colleague Dina Jones, who is really the driving force behind our project, and especially my long-term collaborator Peter Holt, who I worked together with for more than a quarter of a century. I've also been really lucky to work with some very talented people in my own lab. Three of those folks, Steve Benson, the late Otis Freeman, and Rupa Garaya, worked with me for a total combined of more than 50 years, and I've learned something from those folks every day we work together in the lab. The Poultry Science Association has been the element of greatest continuity throughout my professional career. It was the first professional organization that I became a member of. It was the first professional meeting that I attended. It was the first place that I presented a professional scientific paper. PSA published the journal in which I published my first scientific paper and in which I have published the largest number of papers over the course of my career. Maybe even more importantly, it provided a venue in its annual meeting where I have had an opportunity to meet people who were both interesting and doing work that was highly relevant to my own, and some of whom have become genuine friends over time. That meeting holds a very special place in my professional life because I know that every year I look forward to encountering both science and people that will be important and meaningful and valuable to me. I've always had a particular love of good books and good writing, and being a part of the process of producing the journal has been really satisfying to me. I especially have enjoyed my time as a member of the editorial board and as a reviewer of scientific articles. I think the reviewer's task is twofold. The reviewer has to uphold the high scientific standards of the journal, and at the same time try to help authors get their works published. It's a bit of a carryover from my experience as an undergraduate history major that I am especially fond of really good storytelling. I think it's a bit of a scientific urban legend when it's said that the data will speak for themselves. I think that the data, in order to have impact, need to have a well-written paper present them to the world, and a well-written paper involves telling a good story. Why did you want to do this work in the first place? How did you design experiments to examine this problem? What did you learn? What does it mean? Why should the rest of us care? And I really enjoy being part of the process of helping authors tell the story of their research. I think that the future of poultry science is going to be largely shaped by the larger world and society in which we live. Over the course of the last century, the poultry industries have experienced extraordinary growth in productivity and profitability, largely as a result of revolutionary scientific advances in fields such as nutrition, genetics, physiology, management, health, food safety. But I think the next century is going to involve the need to face some new and different challenges, such as enhanced concerns about waste management, enhanced concerns about climate change, about environmental sustainability, environmental impact. At the same time, we can already see that there are changing social norms about animal welfare that are going to affect how we are able to keep poultry. And all of these different changes are going to significantly alter the political, economic, and physical landscape in which we are able to raise birds. One piece of advice I'd have for young scientists is to always try to surround yourself with the best people that you can find to work with. Look for people that have skills and talents that are different than your own, but look for people that share your vision and your sense of enthusiasm for where the research could take you together. And at the same time, look for people whose judgment and ethics that you trust. But don't be afraid of disagreement and dissent within your team. I think it can ultimately be a productive thing as long as it's cordial and respectful. One of my favorite quotes comes from Benjamin Franklin, who said that if everyone is thinking alike, then no one is thinking. Being named a PSA Fellow has a lot of depth of both personal and professional meaning for me because of the long history of my involvement with the association and with its members going back to graduate school days. When I look at the list of prior PSA Fellows, especially when I go back a few years, I see nearly that entire generation of my teachers and mentors that I admire so much, some of whom are no longer with us and I miss very much. I also see some current colleagues that I very, very sincerely respect, some of whom are true friends. And I'll be very proud to have my name listed among such very fine people. At this point in my career, this kind of recognition also makes me feel a sense of responsibility to try to pay forward for all the good things that have come to me through my life and my career, and do everything that I can to try to encourage and support younger scientists in achieving their professional objectives.